really spooky Appalachian stories, like true stories, like people have said on Reddit, like that's happened to them. I love listening to like ASMR spooky stories and also just ghost stories in general, like podcasts, and there's always so many spooky stories that are like specifically on like the Appalachian Trail. I don't know if you guys also love spooky stories, and like if you guys know about the Appalachian Mountains, they're like, I guess, like the oldest mountain range in like North America. So because they're so old, there's just a lot of activity, a lot of spooky activity. So a lot of hikers and a lot of campers and people who live there shared lots of personal experiences. Like these things have really happened. So I think I'm gonna share these are all stories from Reddit. I just have my iPad here and I'm gonna read some. I think maybe I'll have time for like 4. Like these are short. They're pretty short stories. Not too long. So just enjoy, and hopefully it's not too scary. But I love like just listening and falling asleep to stuff like this. So I hope that you will also enjoy. So okay, the first story, there's no like title, it's just like people's personal experience. This person on Reddit, they did like multiple parts, I guess. It's just called Haunted Appalachia Part 1. And they did a little bit of like background. So, the background, they said, I have grown up in eastern Kentucky for several years. Since the age of 1, my family, both sides, have grown up in the rural Appalachias their whole lives as well, but as with modern times, moved to the small town nestled here in a valley situated in between rolling hills and deep ridge lines. Where the following stories take place is a rural area nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains. It's got a name and it's considered a county. However, the area where my dad's family grew up in, within this area and where these stories come from, is more like a collection of deep ridges and mountain folks than anything else. During the early days of the settlers, these mountains were home to the Cherokee Indians. Many cemeteries in this area have actually around 30 to 40 graves of Native Americans buried there, marked with stones and rocks rather than a more traditional Indian burial routine in the 1800s. George Washington's aide-de-camp, Cole Grayson, was bestowed upon him a 70,000-acre piece of land, which now is where my town is located at today. Okay, so that's just a bit of background about the area and the land. So the first story, this is story number 1. In the 1970s or 80s, my mom and her aunt, along with her small cousins, were driving in an empty road just outside of town when they created the top of a hill where an abandoned farmhouse stood. They stopped their car in its tracks when they saw a massive hovering saucer-shaped craft hovering over the house. Frightened, my mother It just says, when they looked in the rear view mirror, they saw the craft coming after them at a high rate of speed, tailing the car and keeping up with it. They attempted multiple times to evade the craft, but to no avail. It chased them for over a mile, back to town, until finally, just at the edge of the county road that leads back into town, it finally disappeared. My mother has told this story at least 100 times to family and friends, most of which believe her, as they too have seen strange lights in the sky in and around various areas of the community, though some don't. She drew me a picture of the spacecraft a few years ago, which I still have. It's gray and almost metallic looking. She drew it. It has red lights on all edges of the bottom of the craft, along with a few green lights on the sides of it. That was the first story. It's very short. Not too spooky. Okay. Story number 2. When my mother was a child, old enough to know when something is going on, she was at home with her parents and siblings one night when a man whom her mother and family had already knew and were acquainted with barged into the house, scared out of his wits. She lived in a cabin deep within the woods, some miles away during his stay. There he reported poltergeist activity, orbs, and paranormal activity within the property and house itself. He would go on to tell my grandmother that reportedly he was tormented all night by a demon who threw pots and pans, glasses, and even furniture at him. This went on for almost the entire night. It would throw them completely out of the cabinets, almost hitting him with it. It also reportedly started knocking and tapping on the sides of the house and thumping the walls and ceiling. Finally, he mustered up the nerves to utter the Lord's Prayer and attempt to rebuke it in the name of Jesus Christ. This seemed to piss it off even more and causing it to become even more aggressive, and now he would try to kill it with more heavier objects. He ran from the house and spent around 7 to 8 hours walking through the woods and rural country roads back to my grandmother's house. While on his way to the house, he reported that he could hear footsteps trailing him in the woods and next to the road, but he couldn't see anything. It continued like this for several hours until he finally reached their house. Wow. Weird. Okay. There's another third little story that these are all from the same person also. So I'm just reading the 3 of them, and then this is the third story. Story number 3. They're pretty short. In the 90s, in town, sat a white brick house at the top of a small hill. A man and his wife lived for several years. The man was in his 40s or 50s, and the woman was somewhere around the same age, I believe. Anyways, one day while my mother was working at a local gas station, where the woman also coincidentally worked at, the man had called her saying that something was wrong with the gas in the house, and he was going to look at it to see if he could fix it. The gas was located in the basement. He went down the stairs and laid on his back and crawled up under the thing to see what had happened. He lit a match and immediately the house exploded, sending rubble everywhere in a massive fire hall and smoke that could be seen throughout the town. The man's wife, who saw the explosion from the gas station, ran home to discover the house gone and is called, oh yeah, it's kind of longer, but I think I'll just do like this last one. It's called We Went on a Camping Trip in Appalachia, Never Again. So, this is also on Reddit. Frankly, I'm on the fence when it comes to the supernatural. I'm not completely sold, but I'm not going to rule it out completely. However, recently, I've decided to reconsider that belief. This story happened a month or so ago in July. Me and my friends had planned out this exciting camping trip to Appalachia. We had an Airbnb and everything prepared. Okay, don't judge me, I didn't want to sleep in a tent. Anyways, it would be a nice change of pace from Iowa. I'd take trees over cornfields any day. The only caveat was the 12-hour drive. Now, before I continue the story, I'll introduce my friends so none of you all are confused. I've got 3 friends. There's Emma, Matt, and Parker. We had brought along Emma's little brother, who I'll call C since he's a minor. Emma's parents were arrested for things that aren't really important for the story, but now C's under Emma's legal guardianship and she couldn't find a babysitter for him. None of us really cared. In fact, we thought C was cool. Anyways, we arrived at the Airbnb and unpacked. There were 3 rooms, so I got a room alone. Matt and Parker got a room together, and Emma and C got a room together. I got lucky. Now, it was around 6 p.m., so we decided to set up a campfire and start roasting marshmallows. We ended up forgetting the marshmallows. No matter, me and Matt decided to go drive to the nearest town and pick up some from the store. C wasn't happy, but we assured him that we'd be back in 10 minutes. While driving to the store, me and Matt talked about Appalachia. Maybe we'll see a skinwalker, said Matt. Dude, shut up. Aren't those things located in Navajo territories? There's no way we encounter one here in Appalachia, I said, and I knew I was right. We arrived at the local convenience store and argued over what kind of marshmallows we should get. I suggested regular marshmallows. Matt suggested pink marshmallows. We eventually came to a decision, and I bought a Hershey's bar as well, since I figured we'd need extra, considering how much of a fat ass Parker is when it comes to candy. After paying, we drove back to the Airbnb. C told me that he saw a deer and was very proud of getting close to it. Emma affirmed this, apparently. This deer's eyes were on the front of its head, but it didn't appear hostile, so she let C get close enough to it to not disturb it anyway. In addition to roasting marshmallows, we'd be making burgers and hot dogs. We lit the fireplace and began cooking the meats. That is when a hiker walked up to our campfire. He had a duffel bag, introduced himself as Josh. He asks if he could use our campfire. I'm just going to switch to this side. We were weirded out, but agreed. Josh opened his duffel bag, revealing a bunch of different kinds of meat. There was chicken, beef, venison, and what looked like pork. Emma questioned this, and Josh states that he thinks it's pork. He found it in a cooler tucked underneath a blind. According to Josh, there was no one around, so he took it. Emma immediately states that she wants the pork. She absolutely loves bacon. Josh shrugs and agrees, but does warn Emma that he didn't know how long the pork was left out there. Emma ignored his warning and insisted on having it. Parker spoke with Josh, while me, Emma, and Matt were trying not to horribly burn the meats. Once finished, I had some burgers. Matt and Parker ate some hot dogs and some of Josh's game. Excuse me. While Emma ate the pork. Emma started to feel sick. Surprise. Darn. So the pork was left out for a while. Josh just threw out the rest of the pork, and Emma went to go puke. We finished eating dinner and began roasting marshmallows. We had way too many marshmallows, so we couldn't actually finish them all. But as expected, Parker's fat ass finished the Hershey's bar. I went in to check on Emma. She had finished puking, and she looked a little pale. Not a sickly pale, just drained. I told her to get some sleep. I told her to take some Pepto and to get some sleep. I didn't want to make her feel bad or think she somehow ruined this trip. I went back outside to wave a goodbye to Josh, who warned about black bears. Then me, Parker, Matt, and C hung out for an hour before it started to sprinkle and then rain. We went inside and decided to just go to sleep. Emma didn't want to sleep in the same room as C since she was sick and didn't want to spread it to C. Matt figured it was just food poisoning, but still had C crash in my room instead. I didn't protest, but I made it clear that I wasn't happy. So much for sleeping alone. Anyways, we got ready for bed and fell asleep. Well, C did. I did not. I heard loud rustling outside. Didn't think too much about it. But what was strange was quiet. It was strange how quiet everything was. I got up and opened my window a crack to let air in, and I didn't hear anything. No cicadas, no insects, no nothing. Just the wind howling through the trees and the rain. I shut the window and went back to bed. I laid in bed for a few minutes before I heard something get thrown out the window. At the window. I turned my head to look at the window. Nothing but darkness. Something about it didn't sit right with me. I got up and walked to the living room. I had to make sure if I locked the doors. The floor creaked under every step I made. I checked the front door, locked. I checked the back door, locked as well. But then I heard Emma's voice. She was on the other end of the glass door. "Let me in," said Emma. I looked at the glass door and didn't see anyone, but then again, I couldn't see anything much at all. "Emma, what are you doing here?" I asked. It took her a second to respond, but she eventually did a simple, "It's cold." This struck me as odd, so I went to Emma's room and found her, sleeping on her bed facing away from the door. I froze. If Emma was here, then who was outside? I slowly closed the door, but stopped. I noticed she was in the fetal position while sleeping and mumbling. The fetal position wasn't the strange part. She did puke a few hours earlier. But the mumbling. Emma doesn't talk in her sleep. I know that for a fact. And what she was mumbling was weird. She was mumbling in no language I recognized. I grabbed the desk lamp just in case. I pushed the door open and walked in. I held the lamp like a weapon. I looked as she turned over to face me. And then she opened her eyes. We both screamed We saw footprints, human footprints. Me and Parker went, oh hell no, and went inside, locked the door, and we barricaded it. Emma asked if it was Josh. Matt shot down that idea. Josh was far too nice. Suddenly we heard a knock on the back door. Hey, open up, said a voice that sounded exactly like Josh. Emma snapped, go to hell. It was out of character for her. It almost seemed territorial. The thing stopped outside. It began circling the Airbnb, tapping on the walls before seeming to leave. We all decided to just go back to sleep. Day 2. The events of the previous night were still imprinted in our brains. We made breakfast, which Emma swallowed up like it was her last meal. We agreed to cut the trip short. After breakfast, we packed up and went outside only to find my van's tires slashed. Our phones did enough service to the storm the previous night, and the closest town was a mile or so away. If we wanted to get new tires, we'd have to push the car through the forest for a mile. But we didn't have a choice. We put C in the car, along with Emma, me, Parker, and Matt, and we began to push. However, we stopped. Yeah, it'd be hard, even harder downhill. The roads wind and twist. It'll roll downhill and right into a tree if we push. We were trapped. We accepted defeat and just went back into the Airbnb. I silently prayed that we wouldn't have to stay a second night in this godforsaken place. Emma kept getting hungry and ate through a majority of our snacks. Everyone was getting weirded out by her behavior. I went outside to take a look at the tracks from the previous night. Human. Yes, absolutely. I followed them. I wasn't stupid, so I didn't follow them into the tree lines. I saw how they seemed to shift into that of a bear. I stepped back and ran back to the Airbnb before entering. I saw a truck pass and waved them down. It was Josh. He thanked me for letting him cook dinner for himself at the fire pit. Josh then looked at my van and saw the slashed tires. He said, "What happened?" "I don't know," I told him. I then asked if he was outside the Airbnb last night. Josh looked at me and said that his home is decently far from here. He was not here. Josh, however, said something that almost made me jump. He could attach my van to his truck and drive us into town. I agreed and thanked him. I ran inside to get the others. We watched from the porch as Josh knelt by the hitch. Eventually, he let us in. He let us get in and began driving us to the town. I was in the passenger seat of his truck, while the others were crammed in the van. I looked at the tree line. I could swear I could see a shadow dash between the trees. Josh broke the silence and asked where I was from. I told him, and he laughed, a nervous laugh. Josh glanced toward the trees and asked if I had seen that too. I froze. He had seen it too. The thing between the trees. I could see Josh, starting to panic slightly. He pressed harder on the gas. Whatever was out there, it was chasing us. It didn't want us to leave. Josh honked the horn in a clear attempt to scare it away, but it didn't. We noticed the most putrid odor that I have ever smelled. It was so pungent that even with the windows closed, we could still smell it. It followed us all the way until we made it to the town. Josh drove us to the car shop and unattached my van. We paid for new tires and put them on. to follow us, and we drove back without an issue except for Emma. She was off, a little more violent, and it even started freaking out C. She insisted on beef jerky instead of her typical spicy chips. She barely spoke after that, never replied to texts, never picked up our calls, and barely attended our college classes. None of it, in fact. Last I saw of her was recently, when she picked up C from his first day of school. She seemed off, thinner, hollow even, eyes were sunken in. I walked up to her and tried talking with her. She said nothing and just got into her car. I spoke to C. He told me that he didn't feel safe with her anymore. I'm concerned for Emma and C. I don't know what happened to her. If anyone out there has any ideas of what I could do, please tell me, because I don't know what to do now. Oh goodness. That was the end of the story. Weird. Maybe she got something from eating the pork, and it was actually a demon. But yeah, what do you guys think?